Right. Why do you think it is that Iran has not been able to inflict a huge amount of damage? They have, of course, been sending hundreds, if not thousands, of missiles and drones into the neighboring countries. But in terms of real damage on ground, is it because of the lack of leadership? Is it just the lack of adequate firepower? How do you look at it?
I think it's a combination of everything. Clausewitz said, everything in a war seems simple, but even the simple is difficult. It's a combination of what was done to them in the 12-day war. 40% of the launchers, up to 500 of the missiles that left them with 2,000. I think they were back up to 2,500. But also that command and control that you talked about. There's nobody to push a button. There's no place to push a button. But there is a lot of mobile missile launchers, of course, the drone supply. I think the overwhelming nature of this operation, but it's a huge country, so to cover it is hard, and the air defense is necessary to protect everyone, even places like Saudi Arabia with some of the most advanced air defenses as well. There is no 100% air defense system, but I think the lack of response, all the people that I talked to, and you probably have some guests on that talked about the Armageddon that Iran would unleash on everyone if this happened, didn't come true. But the United States lost 3 service members, 5 critically injured. There is no bloodless war. This is still a dangerous situation. Of course, whoever's left in the Islamic regime and the hardliners are still very dangerous. And there are the fact that they're targeting all of these people. They attacked a British airfield all the way in Cyprus. There's some reckless behavior, which is dangerous behavior.
Right. One of the aspects, though, that will inevitably come up is the fact that there were negotiations on in Geneva between the United States and Iran. Oman was also part of that. Now, looking at the intensity and the scale of these strikes, the question that comes to mind is that were these meetings just a ruse and time perhaps to prepare for a full-scale invasion?
No, I mean, the biggest deterrence to war is to prepare for war. I think that, the Trump doctrine is, of course, to have that military, real credible threat of we're going to negotiate, but we're not going to do like the old days of years of negotiation, or you say you're going to do something like the failed JCPOA and then you don't do it. This isn't it. At each time, both before the 12-day war and before this war, I think those were valid attempts at negotiation, while also preparing for when negotiations fail, which is that strength. Peace through strength that the president talks about a lot. And for somebody to say that the negotiation was only Maximus, like we were saying, you're going to do these things and that's it, is also not true. A lot of the negotiations involved sanctions relief. It involved providing uranium enriched for actual civilian energy, not the 60-90% that the Islamic regime has in violation, to include of the UN IAEA saying for the first time in 20 years, clear violation of enrichment standards. The negotiations were real, and the Islamic regime and all of the people involved were like, they're not acting like this is real. They're not acting like the negotiations are actually to get to a complete abandonment of nuclear development. We don't need another global terrorist sponsor to have a nuclear weapon. We've seen what that looks like, and India definitely knows what that looks like. It changes everything. And they weren't negotiating in good faith.
Right. Are you looking at an Iran that is increasingly isolated? Russia and China, of course, supported it, but EU has come out to back American actions in principle. In the Middle East itself, the countries that have obviously, been at the receiving end of these attacks are coming out and openly talking against Iran. How are you looking at all of this panning out?
Yeah, this is the idea that you can predict war, and war is uncertain. I just wouldn't have predicted this reckless behavior of turning every nation, all the Gulf states that were sitting this out, turning them against you, and now they're all the UK, France, all of these countries signed this joint document saying we're all in it. This is like self-defeating behavior. And even Russia and China, while they sent, they showed support. They didn't send support, although there were some joint exercises in the naval aspect. And if you want to talk about the impact to the global economy, people should go back and look at what happened to the oil prices when Russia illegally invaded Ukraine back in 2022. That was the largest jump. So to say that they didn't really support, absolutely, the Islamic regime was not only isolated at the beginning of this, has clearly isolated itself as like self-defeating behavior, which could be what we're seeing, which I truly believe is the end of this terror regime.
Right. And the UK has come out to say that they're going to allow for the UK's military bases to be used by the United States to strike Iran. Do you see other countries joining in this effort?
Absolutely. I mean, this is reckless. This is almost like validating the reasons why this operation was necessary. That this is a reckless regime that doesn't use like the rational actor theory, international norms, all of this. I absolutely think that we're going to see other countries. I know France was supposedly sending an aircraft carrier, and I don't know if it didn't, if that was true. Absolutely, because this is reckless. I mean, attacking civilian locations, all of these different countries. While we did sink, the United States sunk 9 Iranian naval ships, the threats to this global economy, 20% of it, and I know a lot for India and other countries, this reckless behavior is going to cause many other countries to join in at least the defense, which is like we just talked about, which, I mean, how much offensive capability does Iran have? It still has some, of course, but join in the defense. Now, I don't know if they'll join, although Saudi Arabia said that they will respond directly to the attack. So you could see other countries joining in an offensive capability as well.
Right. And what happens to the long-term Iranian support to Hezbollah, to Hamas, and the Houthis? Do you see that being scaled down drastically now?
Absolutely. I mean, just to figure, the Islamic regime in Iran pushed $1 billion to Hezbollah since what's happened to them since October 7th, and Israel took out their entire leadership as well, crippled their missile capabilities, and of course with Syria gone, the flow of weapons couldn't get there, but Iran still pushed $1 billion to Hezbollah. But that's a part of this, which is one of the goals, which is that support for proxy armies destabilizing their own nations. In the Houthis, I mean, how did a pirate empire get the greatest shore to sea missile capability when their entire country is the starvation and real famine happening there? Absolutely, that's going to stop it. I mean, one of the reasons that we're here is because of what the Iranian government was doing to the Iranian people, because their economy had collapsed. They were getting ready to move their entire capital because it had run out of water. That you would think rationally you would stop sending billions to your terror proxies to fulfill this greater terrorist caliphate that you want to build and provide for your people. As the president says, this is their once in a lifetime chance, once in a generational chance for the Iranian people to seize that power, so that stops happening.
Right. Do you see a role for India in de-escalating this crisis, given the huge stakes that India has in the Middle East?
Do I think that they'll be involved in the de-escalation? Is that what you said?
Yeah. The role. What role do you think India can play in de-escalating the situation? Because India has always called for peace and for even whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or otherwise. Prime Minister Modi has been on record to say that now's not a time for war.
Yeah, I think each individual, and I've been amazed in covered Operation Sindoor, see the new India and the new strategic doctrine. Of course, India is rising to a global power, the economic, military, and everything. In this specific case, although it has those, of course, national interest, I believe that they can join with Israel and others in the voice of how did we get here in a bunch of failedness, and the greater outcome is greater peace, greater economic stability, not just with Israel, the Gulf states, even with the new Iran. I mean, imagine the unleashing the capability of Iranian 92 million people in sciences and economy, and even the petro systems. And I think it's important that that petro infrastructure, that oil infrastructure, has not been a target of the United States and Israel. And I think that's going to continue just from that perspective. I don't know of any direct role other than supporting democracy and the rule of law, and not to be supporting global terrorism.
John Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us here at Times Now.
Yeah, thanks for having me.